you guys. So, found a good spot. Got a couple more hikers over here on the trail that may be in the background. I don't know. But hey, we're all out here to learn and have fun anyway. So, what I'm going to do is set up a quick shelter. And we'll get that up real quick, and we'll get to talking more about thermoregulation when we get there. Hey guys, alright, so I got my USGI poncho strung up, my 55-gallon drum liner cut up and laid down flat as a moisture barrier. Got my water here that we collected earlier, and I got my wool blanket. Now, on the subject of thermoregulation, basically thermoregulation, keeping your body from going into either hyperthermia or, on the other end, hypothermia. Hyperthermia is the basically happening of your body's core temperature rising above 101.7 degrees Fahrenheit. I don't remember what it is in Celsius. I'll have to put that up somewhere over here if I can figure that part out on YouTube. Hypothermia is the happening of your body going below, your body core temperature going below 95 degrees Fahrenheit. And various things can happen in a few stages. You know, first off, you're gonna pretty much just get shivers. You're gonna start losing mobility. You'll end up having slurred speech and loss of dexterity. If you can't touch your pinky to your thumb like that, or if it's labored, then odds are you're pretty on set into hypothermia, and you're on a downhill slope. After loss of dexterity will typically come your heart rate dropping, respiratory rate dropping, all the way down to very slurred speech, very labored movement. You'll get sluggish, and you'll end up where your heart rate drops so low that you end up going into cardiac arrest. And well, we all know what happens after cardiac arrest. Unless you've got some type of defibrillator, you're going down. Now, that's kind of a dramatic scenario for someone practicing bushcraft. If you were in a survival scenario, then you would have to worry about that. But the whole idea of bushcraft is not to rough it. The idea of bushcraft is to smooth it with the most minimal kit you can, and by learning the resources that are around us naturally, we're able to, you know, cross a few things off the checklist that we don't absolutely need to bring into the woods. So, you know, I can come in with my blanket to keep nice and warm, and one small pack that has everything that I basically need in it. And hyperthermia. Hyperthermia is where when your body goes above 101.7 degrees Fahrenheit, and essentially what's happening is your body can't release all of the heat that it's taking in. So it just keeps building and building and building. Temperature goes up and up and up, and it gets to the point where your organs start failing because they just can't handle all that heat. You know, it's commonly said that, or it's commonly put as it's as though your insides are, you know, basically boiling and your brain is boiling. It's not quite that drastic, but it might as well be. You're still going to end up dead. So in order to keep away from having hyperthermia or hypothermia, what we want to do is learn how to regulate our body temperature depending on the environment. Right now, it's just rained. I'm in a sort of mountainous climate. I know the ground is soaking wet. It's cool to the touch. And it's about, from what I looked at on the weather, it's about 60 degrees, which is really not a terrible environment, but still, when it gets cooler tonight, you know, it can get down to still around 40 degrees in these parts. You know, being wet and cold, that's where you run into trouble. So basically, what I've done to pre-prepare for that is I brought my 100% wool blanket, and I chose wool, and many people choose wool because of its insulative value. 100% wool will keep 80% of its insulative value when it is wringable wet, when it is just soaking, like you just took it, dunked it in the river, pulled it back out, maybe shook it a little bit, and wrapped it around yourself. It's still going to insulate 80% as well as it would if it was bone dry. And that's awesome. The reason being because the fibers of wool are hollow. Most fibers, like you have cat hair, you know, a cat hair, you can break it and look at it and get a microscope, and you'd see that it is solid, just like your hair, just like my hair. But wool, sheep's wool in particular, or merino wool, or you know, that real heavy, coarse type wool. If you were to do the same thing, get a microscope, look at it, slice it in half, and you'd look right down like it was a straw. So what that does is essentially, you know, you have all these fibers that, if they get wet, if it was not wool, if it was not hollow, then the whole thing would be wet. You wouldn't have any insulated value because you don't have any airspace in between, you know, this side and this side. But with wool, since say my fingers are hollow, even though everything's woven together real tight and it's dripping wet, you're still going to have that air that's inside those fibers, and that is still insulating your body from the outer element. So for thermoregulation in cold weather, wool is an excellent choice. It would be a terrible choice in hot weather. That seems like that's pretty common sense. But part of regulating your core body temperature in bushcraft, and you know, in an environment where you decided you were going to be here, not you have found yourself here, is prepare ahead of time. I mean, it's the old Boy Scout motto, be prepared. You know, what I chose to wear, even though it's 60 degrees and it's a little balmy or it's a little humid, but it's not terrible. For example, I have my thermals on, just a cotton t-shirt. I would normally have put on my wool sweatshirt, but that would just be way too much hiking up in here. So I'll show you that in another video when it gets cooler. But just some heavy canvas pants, which are going to protect me from the thorns and the little critters. And I got my thermals on underneath these. My good boots that are waterproof. They're going to keep any moisture away from my feet. You know, if it was in very cold weather, I would probably wear a wool cap, because most of your body heat goes out your head and your feet. So, basically, for this environment, if we say I'm going to spend the night out here, I would take my wool blanket and lay it on top of this moisture barrier, which is key, because if I were to let moisture get up in through there, that's just going to make me colder, and it's just going to make me colder for longer. So what we'll do is we'll lay out our wool blanket here real quick, and
this, trying to keep everything that we have dry as much as we can. We'll lay this out. Okay. Now this is fairly short, but I made it that way so that this is actually a tube. It's almost like a sleeping bag with no bottom. And that is an old trick that I believe Horst Kephart used. He would take his blankets and fold them in half, stitch them up one side, and that makes it so you can put it on over top of what you're wearing and still have your boots on, and that one helps keep your feet nice and warm and out of the elements, and also you can get up if you have to and tend the fire or get more firewood without having to continually at night in the dark peel your blanket off and put it back on, or you get done and peel it off and put it back on and peel it off and put it back on. You know, and you don't have those little spots where the wind is whipping in and getting underneath there and hitting your skin and tensing you up and waking you up. You know, it just keeps sort of a microclimate inside there that is far superior in my opinion. But my opinion is a very humble one. So what we have here is basically something that is going to comfortably keep me out of the weather, keep me from losing heat, body heat through conduction, basically by my skin being in direct contact with the ground and me losing heat through the ground that way. And this, what I did was, there's a little, you can either check it on the internet or you can check it by holding a Bic lighter up in the air. You can get your wind. You can figure out which direction your prevailing wind is coming from, and by doing so, okay, in my opinion, or in my case, the wind is coming from that direction, so it's coming this way. The reason why I set my shelter up like this is because that's going to basically ramp the wind from behind my shelter up over and create a little eddy current right here. Now if I had a fire, what that would be doing is taking the heat, or taking the air, running it up through here. It would stall over the top of this shelter and drop down onto where that fire is, and that fire would push it back in toward me. It's basically just going to create a little cyclone here, a sideways cyclone or a rolling type effect, just like a wave. And what that helps do is circulate the air right here that's coming from the fire into me. It's bouncing then off of here and radiating down onto me, so it's coming from two directions now, and it's going to keep doing that and cycling through the time that I have my fire, which is very efficient. So let's see, where do we go from here? We've got our shelter, which is most important in my opinion over fire. I would rather have a shelter up as a second line of defense, the first line of defense being your clothing and what you wear, and you prepare by coming into the woods wearing what you think you should need, plus a layer. Then we have our shelter, which is going to keep the wet and the wind off of us, which helps immensely. Third priority is going to be fire. Now, I was thinking about trying to get a fire going here to set an example, and I was figuring I was going to fail at that. And we'll see how much battery I have left and how much time I have to be out today. But you know what? I see some dry stuff. Let's see if we can't get a quick fire going with maybe a ferro rod and some dry tinder that I've collected previously to be prepared. And see if we can't get something going. I'll set you up. I'm going to not talk while I'm doing it exactly, because it seems like it's starting to rain again. So I'm going to put the waterproof back on the GoPro. It's going to have terrible audio at that point, so we'll do that and we'll come back to you.